today's Scaling with People podcast. I'm Gwen Recur, your host and founder of Guide to HR. Today, we're going to be talking about founder and entrepreneurial burnout and how you can fend it off. And I'm super excited to have Kenneth Berger here with me to discuss this topic. Kenneth, introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, thank you for having me. So my name's Kenneth Berger. I'm an executive coach. I work with startup leaders, and my background is I worked in the tech world and startup world for many years in operating roles at Adobe, at Slack, as a founder of my own startup. But I kind of found myself in coaching because I was looking at just all the ways that people were burning out, right, or not making this work sustainable. And when I thought about how I wanted to support entrepreneurs, I was like, okay, there's a lot of people who can build products, but there's not so many people who are taking care of people's mental health, right? Of making sure that we can do these jobs for a long time versus, burning out or selling out or what have you.
Absolutely. So I know you had shared that you also have founded a company before. So maybe we could jump in there really quickly and talk about your experience as a founder and what were some of the challenges and maybe a lesson learned that you could share with the other founders listening right now.
Sure. Yeah. So I founded a company called YesGraph with a friend of mine from grad school. And it was one of those things where from the very beginning, I knew there was tension, right? We were good friends, of course, we knew each other well, but we were also the kind of friends who would, argue in a friendly way. Like, I think this and I think that, and we would debate intellectual topics. And so I think the argument we made to each other was that tension was good. And I think the thing that I notice in retrospect when I think about my experience with that co-founder is that once it was a company, once we tied our professional sort of future to that, our professional reputations, all of a sudden the stakes to those disagreements or those discussions felt so much higher, right? And that's something that I see so much with, my entrepreneur clients is everything they do, the stakes seem so high, right? Everything seems life or death. And I think that weight hanging on every email you send, every Slack message you hit send on, every presentation you send off or client pitch you make, it just makes everything so hard. And so I ended up breaking up with my co-founder. I got fired by my own co-founder from my company
Wow.
because of the stakes of those discussions. We couldn't let anything go, right?
Yeah.
We because we thought that every disagreement about product or about marketing or about sales was life or death. And if we didn't win the argument, well, who knew what was going to happen? And so when I look back on that experience, a lot of it is about almost like nervous system activation, right? Like that fight or flight thing. Because I feel like I spent a year plus in fight or flight. And now a lot of what I work with on clients to do is say, hey, you can do this job without it feeling like a tiger is lunging at you all the time.
Wow, that's so interesting. Literally, the last podcast we had was just talking about how you can be different from that perspective, but understanding how to communicate and how to work with each other through tools like predictive index can actually may have, like, if we were able to go back in time and implement something like that, how that might have actually had a different experience for you. That's so interesting. And so now you shifted from being the tech guy, being a founder, into helping founders. What's been your experience and why did that calling happen for you?
It really came out of my own failures, honestly, that, after that rocky exit from my own startup, I got the opportunity to work at Slack early on. And so again, huge high point of my career, getting to sort of, launch this very successful software product, grow it through the first year. And again, I had conflict with management, right? Like I worked for the CEO, who's this sort of big tech celebrity. And so when I was out on my butt at the end of that experience, right, it really kind of provoked some self-reflection about this, right? Of like, what am I doing wrong such that I'm getting these amazing opportunities and then I'm ending up being so stressed, so worried, so scared, right, for year plus, and then not really getting the outcome that I wanted. And so sure, the product was good, but my human experience at that time was not good at all.
Mm.
And that's kind of what got me thinking about, yeah, how do we make that better? Like, okay, great. Like, tech world's pretty good at making tech products that people like. But how good are we at actually making sure we have fun while we do it, right? That we can
Mm.
actually feel relaxed, feel safe.
Well, especially in a startup environment where it's just like every second feels like a critical moment in the business of moving it forward or not being able to be successful in the product rollout or getting investors or getting that first or first client up to like whatever your revenue goal is. And every second, every penny, it counts. So it is hard. I see a lot of founders and executive teams struggle with bringing in the human element of your people are working hard. You need to celebrate them. You need to give them a moment where they can catch their breath. You need to give them acknowledgments and help support them and their growth. And there's a lot of movement in that area, but I think where you're really targeting is the actual founders and CEOs, because as a founder myself, I know I just keep going because I'm excited about what I'm doing and I want to make it be successful. And then all of a sudden, the husband's coming and asking, "Hey, are we going to have dinner before it's tomorrow?" And it's like, "Oh my gosh, it's already 8, 9 o'clock at night. Yeah, we probably should eat."
Yep. No,
So, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
so that's exactly right. That, it's beautiful that people have these visions that they believe in so much. That's part of why I love working with entrepreneurs is these are not people who are blasé about their work. They say, no, it matters to me a lot, right? I'm
Yeah.
putting so much of myself into this. And I think
Yeah.
the danger of that can be staking your value as a human being on the success
Mm,
of this particular enterprise, which is dependent on so many other things, right? And I think that is part of what can create that high stakes feeling of like, oh yeah, this is the measure of whether I'm a good person or not, or whether I'm valuable or not, versus owning I'm a good person, just because I know that about myself. And this is a project I'm working on. It means a lot to me. It has meaning, it has purpose, but it's not my value as a human being.
well, that is so powerful. And if the listeners just get that tidbit alone, I call this podcast a success because it's so true. And I would even take it down to like, you don't have to be a founder and a CEO or an executive. That is the truth, no matter what role, no matter what level, no matter what you're doing, your work doesn't define you. And I think that through the uh, different things that have happened in our economy and the COVID situation and the different generations coming in to the working environment, I find that that's becoming more of a trend of like, you are not being defined as what you do, right, as a human being. So great call out there. Shifting a little bit in regards to that, right? Because as a founder, I do find I do sometimes tackle my worth onto how successful I can make my company, how many clients I have, and how many people I'm engaged with. What do you see getting in the way of people achieving their dreams?
So for me, this is a topic that's really close to my heart, as you know. Because for me, the answer to that is really people don't ask for what they want, right? And so this is actually a book that I'm in the process of working on to sort of express my ideas around this. But what I find is, of course, we all think we know, how to ask for what we want, right? Because we all do that every day. We order our coffees in the morning, et cetera, et cetera. But we can go a level deeper, right? Because say, for example, right, like say there's something that's bothering us, right? Often, we're focusing on the complaint, but we're not actually articulating the dream behind that complaint. Because for every complaint, right, there's an idea of a potential future where things could be better, right?
Yeah.
And so just taking that step to say, gosh, this thing I'm dealing with is really annoying or frustrating, but man, wouldn't it be great if blank? And just having that as a dream to say, yeah, like I would like that. I don't know if it's achievable, if it's going to happen for me, but boy, that would mean a lot to me if I could make that real, right? All of a sudden, now you have not just a complaint, you have a dream, right? You have something you can ask for because almost any dream we have, it's going to involve influencing other people, right? We don't do much alone.
Yeah. That's so true. And also too, I feel like it's an acknowledgement of where you're trying to go. It's re-energizing. You have your mindset on that goal and just putting it out there in the universe. They say, I remember when I graduated a couple of years ago, that the people who are successful are the people who write it, who know what they want, know where they're going, have actually got like their goals, and they're more successful if they actually write it down.
Yep. And
Yeah.
articulating is just the first step, right? So once you've articulated the goal, then the thing that's often really scary for people is the actual asking, right? Of like, wait, I have to say it out loud if I have a dream? I'm like, yeah, if you have a dream, probably you're going to need to speak it out loud to someone or even many people, many times, realistically speaking.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I sort of split the world into what I think of as sort of people pleasers and control freaks, right? Because often people pleasers show up, they say, I'm afraid to ask anyone for anything, because then, they're going to say no, and that's going to be embarrassing or frustrating or bad or unsafe. And then control freaks on the opposite end, where they say, yeah, I ask everyone, all the time for what I want. Like, I don't know why they don't just give me what I want all the time. They're so annoying. Why don't they do what they're told? Um,
Yeah.
and these are both examples of like not quite effectively asking for what you want, because you got to say it out loud for those people pleasers, even if it's scary, right? To find that, like, you can ask anyone anything, right? It's not
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily cost anything.
I always
Um,
flip on the people pleasers is if someone were to ask you this, would you do it? Well, yes, of course you're a people pleaser. You're gonna do it if you can, right? If it's something in your like your capabilities, but why would you take that away from someone else? Someone else wants to help you. Why would you take that? You want to help them. Why are you taking their capability of helping you away from them?
Yeah. No, I totally resonate with that. And actually, one of the ways that I talk about the value of asking for what you want is that it's not necessarily about getting what you want, right? Because of course, mostly the world says no when we ask for things, right? Right. That's how the world works. And yet, part of what happens when you consistently say out loud what you want and then also respect other people's responses, right? You're not the control freak saying you have to do what I say. Like if someone says no, you say, okay, like I hear you. The answer is no, right? That creates this really kind of respectful, high integrity relationship, right? Where you're being really real about who you are and what you want, and you're respecting other people's boundaries. If like when you say no, it means no.
Yeah.
And that creates so much power in your life beyond just achieving what you want, right? It's about living with integrity of saying, like, yeah, I'm going for the things that I want in my life, and I'm respecting the boundaries other people set.
Yeah, and I find that just because they say no doesn't mean it's not, it could actually mean not now. And or it could be no, but in the back of their mind, they now know what you want or need. And they're engaging with other people. Oh, that's a good fit. Let me make some connections. And all of a sudden, you're getting referrals and network connections and meeting people that are going to fit what you're looking for and what you need. So I love this concept of just like getting it out there. And also, too, like, I remember at the end of last year, it's like, man, I really want my business to grow. And I envision having 1 to 2 partners by the end of the year. Didn't expect that was going to happen so quickly. Told my family, told my loved ones, told my friends. And before end of January, I had a partner. And I was like, wait, what? I wasn't quite ready.
Woohoo!
But it happened. And now we're on this fun roller coaster together. And, I have other visions of the company growing. But at the end of the day, I don't know that would have been where the company would have been if I hadn't have put it out there and told people this is what I want.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that you've really hit on that perfect kind of middle ground where I think sometimes people, more on the people pleaser side will sort of beg when they ask, be like, if it's not too much trouble, like, do you think maybe you could do X? Right. And the control freaks will go the opposite end. They'll say, you better give me X or else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And really that middle ground is just about, I want you to know me better. Right. And like,
Mm-hmm.
there's this thing that I haven't told you that's really important to me. It's important to me to have 2 partners by the end of the year. Right. And there may not even be an explicit ask. You may not know like who's going to be able to help you with that goal. But
Right.
by putting yourself out there more and having that be out there versus be a secret, right? Then you've got these opportunities to build relationships with people and you respect their no's, right? So that's building a relationship as well. And those strong relationships are often what that change that you want comes from.
Yeah, exactly. So I find that like entrepreneurs, founders, they typically know where they want to go and what they want. But with interacting with founders through your line of work, where do you see people getting stuck at and how they figure out where to start making the change to get to their dreams?
So this is a good question, right? Because we kind of gone through what I think of the first 2 steps, right? The first step is articulate what you want, right? What's that dream? The second step is ask for what you want, aka say it out loud in an effective way. Effective way, that's for you control freaks. Say it nicely, right? But then the third step is actually, I think, the one that people miss most of all, which is actually accepting and listening to the response.
Mm, okay.
because usually the world tells us no, or some form of no, right? Whether it's, maybe later or another time, or I'll think about it, or we'll see. Um, and so often again, the people pleaser will say, oh, well, okay, that's it. Better give up. You know,
Mhm.
all right, I'm done. And the control freak will say, no, you're wrong. You're not allowed to say no, right? Like I blame you for this situation. Um, and either way, you're missing the gold. And the gold is the feedback in that no of, gosh, like there's something in that no that tells me what should I do next, right?
Mhm.
What's the way in which this ask didn't quite land? And so how do I do it again and again and again and iterate, right? To say, oh, maybe I need to iterate on how I'm articulating my dream, right? Or like maybe I need to ask for a more specific piece of it or something that's more actionable or something that's more in their language, right? Maybe I need to iterate on how I ask it or to whom, right? All these things that if you don't listen to those no's, right, or you don't sort of absorb those no's, you're not getting all that data about how to try again and try again and try again. And that is how people actually get what they want, is they listen and they try again. But it's hard because it's so uncomfortable to be with those no's, right? To actually
Absolutely.
absorb, I'm
It's
being told
rejecting,
no.
right? You're kind of like being rejected, and that human nature does not like that.
Right. So that's the part that's hard. Those three steps, of course, they sound easy, right? It's like articulate what you want, ask for what you want, accept the response. But the
Mhm.
hard part is the emotional part, right? The parts of us that are like, oh, I don't know. That's really, really scary to do those things, even though they sound so simple.
Yeah, absolutely. And an introvert like me, putting myself out there over and over again, that's also a challenge too.
Yeah, 100%. Right. And so, for each of those, I think there's stories that we tend to have that say why we can't do that, right? Maybe we don't articulate because, oh, I'm actually fine. I don't need anything, right? This is totally cool. I mean, it's a little annoying, fine, but so that's a story that actually gets in the way of articulating what we want. If we say, oh, it's actually uncomfortable to say I want something because I know I might not get it. Right. And so it's a way of keeping ourselves safe by not owning of like, yeah, there's something I want, I don't have yet.
Yeah, so powerful. So what have you found has been helpful, or what advice have you offered to your customers and entrepreneurs who are out there who are stuck and maybe stuck in the fear of the no's, or processing the feedback, or what do I do next because I keep getting the no's, how to get over that? Like what are some of the things that you've advised to entrepreneurs who are stuck?
So what I find is really, progress tends to come simply from following that process. And so the meat of working through that tends to be what's getting in the way, right? And so that's more about the individual, right? Of identifying, okay, one part of me wants to move forward with, asking for what I want and sort of pushing forward in the world, but another part of me really doesn't, right? Maybe it's the part, that's introverted and is afraid of asking out loud, or maybe it's the part that's afraid of getting rejected and what that would mean, right? Like maybe that feels unsafe or like it would threaten, sort of other things that are important to me in my life. Um, and so a lot of the work that I end up doing with entrepreneurs is actually working through that and understanding how to calm yourself when you get scared, because getting scared is a totally normal human thing we all do many times a day. And I think that the danger is treating those moments that it feels like there's a tiger in the room as if there is a
Mhm.
tiger. It's like, no, 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 there's no tiger, right? We're just on Zoom meetings, right? No one, no one's going to get hurt. We're going to be okay. Yes, there are real stakes involved, but it's usually not quite as scary as we think it are, as we think they are. Um, and so there's a lot of techniques that we work through to sort of get through these things, from kind of cognitive reframes to like, how can I look at this in a different way, right? Maybe I'm looking at it in a high stakes way and there's a lower stakes way of thinking about it, right? Of like, oh yeah, worst case, like I go and get a job at a big boring company. It's actually not that bad, right? Like it'd be disappointing, but I'm not going to be out on the street.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of times I have conversations of like, well, let's think about this. Like, don't be stressing yourself out. You are not going to kill someone, right? Like the stakes are, yes, they're high for the businesses carry on, or they get the revenue so you can pay your bills. But at the end of the day, like, are you killing someone or not? Are you keeping them alive? If not, give yourself a breather, give yourself like a space, right, to like process. And um, I think that a lot of times, especially entrepreneurs, we can be really hard on ourselves.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So Yeah, always pushing. Well, as we wrap up here, any last final thoughts, tidbits, or tricks or tools that you'd like to share with the audience?
Because I also wanted to mention kind of somatic interventions, right? Because I think that sometimes people get hung up on solving everything through thinking, right? Especially in the entrepreneur world, because we got all these really smart, really creative thinkers, right?
Yep.
And then some of these emotional challenges of like, oh, it's really scary when I try to do this thing. You can't think your way out of that sometimes, right? Like it is a physical, emotional, somatic thing. And
Yeah.
so this is where, I think some startup folks are very into mindfulness and meditation. And for some people, it's like really woo and scary and like, what is this stuff? How is it relevant to my life? Which I appreciate, I get. And so I try and really bring them some of these somatic interventions to in a really practical way of like, yeah, if you find yourself stumbling over your words in a meeting, right, you're probably nervous, right? And working through those nerves, right, that fear before the meeting is actually going to let you show up and be a better speaker. And so much of, I just laugh at so much of speaking training, right? It's like, okay, you should talk this way or talk that way. When so much of it is just relax, right? Like lower those stakes, remind yourself that you're safe. And if you know you're safe, right, like it's easy to talk, right? Anybody can do it. And
Yeah, I mean,
so,
we all do it all day long, right? Especially founders. We're talking to customers, we're talking to investors, we're talking to creating relationships. So yeah, leaning on trusting yourself too, that you know what you're talking about.
yeah. So examples like just doing, a few deep breaths, right? Of, closing your eyes and lying down for 10 minutes, taking a walk around the block or doing a little bit of exercise, right? Taking a walking meeting, having a little mindful moment, naming like, ooh, maybe I'm going to take a sip of my tea and really smell it. Oh, it smells so good.
What's the
Mm.
flavor of the day?
Yeah, exactly. And so all these things get us back into the moment, into our bodies to remind ourselves, oh, like there's no tiger. I'm safe. I'm just sitting in my chair in my office. I can do this. This is going to be fine.
I love it. Well, thanks, Kenneth. A great conversation. And for the listeners out there, I hope you got a few tidbits. I know I certainly did. And hope you have the rest of your day wherever you're at in the world. Thank you so much.